GM. I'm Daivat. I'm a front-end engineer at Missouri, and I'm a DD member. Shout out to Developer DAO. And today I'll try to show you how to add sign-in with Ethereum to your React app. Now, if you don't know what sign-in with Ethereum is, I highly suggest referring to one of the links that I have put in the description. I will not be going over many details about how it works. I will just be focusing on the implementation itself. So yeah, make sure you have a brief idea of what it is. You don't have to read the entire EIP, but it's good if you have some idea of what we are trying to implement. So this is what we are trying to build with today's tutorial. It's basically a Next.js app that lets you connect your wallet, and it lets you sign in to the site using it. So yeah, if you can go to this URL and try it out yourself. Let me just connect my wallet, and now I'll have to sign a message. And as you can see, this message contains all of these weird looking fields. We'll get to this later on when we implement it, but for now let's just sign this message. And it now says it now says that I'm signed into the site. Cool. So what's actually happening here? Like let's go through the different things that are going on behind the scenes before we jump into the code. So if you know a little bit about sign-in with Ethereum, you would know that you actually need a server in order for this to make any sense, since you are using sessions and a cookie to maintain authentication, to keep track of the user's authentication. So you need a backend, you need an API, you need a server, whatever you want to call it. You need a server. So yeah, just keep that in mind. There are two things that are like, we have two moving parts. There's a front end, which is the UI, and there is a backend, which is keeping track of the session. So when you click on that sign in with Ethereum button, when I click on this button, the front end pings the server and asks for something called a nonce. Again, if you don't know what a nonce is, I have put a link in the description. Just briefly read through that page. But for simplicity's sake, and I'm just oversimplifying this, but think of it as a random set of characters that the server generates, and it uses it to verify the user signature. So yeah, the front end asks for a nonce from the backend. When you click on this button, once the front end receives that nonce, and we click on this button, as you can see, there is a nonce included in the message that our wallet is prompting us to sign. When you click sign, the front end sends that signed message to the backend, and the backend checks if the signed message the signature that it received actually contains the same nonce that it sent earlier on. So the nonce is I would say the most important part of it, but it's not like the only important part. Like as you might have noticed, like there were some other fields as well that are probably important as well. So, but again, let's just do a quick recap. When you click on the sign in with Ethereum button, the front end asks for a nonce, receives that nonce, prompts you to sign a message using it, sends that signature back to the backend. The backend verifies the signature. If the signature looks all good, then you are signed in. It creates a session, and that's how you know that you are signed in. Otherwise, it just won't let you proceed. It will just throw an error. And one other thing that you might notice, that if you open this in a new tab, you will still be signed in. So if I sign in from here, I go back, I'm still signed in, which is really nice. That's how it's supposed to work. Cool. And that's happening because the front end is on each page load. The front end is pinging the server to check if there is an active session, if there is someone who has already signed in. Okay, and we will be implementing all of this, so you will get a much better idea of how things are going on in terms of the technical side of things. But yeah, this is like a brief overview of what we will be doing. This is all we will be doing. It's not that difficult. Yeah, let's run through it now. So to follow along, all you really need is just Node.js installed on your machine, and just pull up a terminal. We will be using this tool that I made called Create Web3 Frontend. If you have used Create Next App or Create React App, it's somewhat similar to that. In fact, the source code for this is 100% based off of Create Next App. It just like creates a folder and sets up a Web3 frontend for you. Like that's I know that's the name, but it sets up a project with this a library called wagmi. If you have not heard of it, it's this amazing set of React hooks built by Awkweb and the rest of the wagmi team. Shout out to them. That's what we will be using. And on top of that, it also includes a Tailwind CSS, and it also comes along with the wallet connections already set up for you, so you don't have to write that boilerplate again and again. Cool. So just pull up a terminal and type in npx create web3 frontend, and make sure you specify the version 1.0.0, because that's the latest version, and that's the one we should want to be using. I'm going to be using the TypeScript version, so I'm going to specify --ts. If I just cannot deal with JavaScript anymore, but if that's something you want to do, just don't include this flag and press enter. It will ask you for the name of the project. Just use anything. I'm just going to use my CV app, and I'm not going to continue because I've already done this. I've already installed the dependencies, but you should hit enter and it will install all the dependencies for you. Once that's done, once all of your dependencies are installed, you want to cd into your project folder and just open it inside VS Code. Before we actually look at any code, let's just run this locally and see how it looks. Cool. So it's just like a page that lets you connect your wallet and lets you disconnect it. Very simple stuff, but yeah, it sets up all of this for you, so you don't have to write that boilerplate again and again and again. Cool. So we don't have to worry about this part. This is the code for when someone has not connected their wallet. We don't want anything to do with that, so I'm just going to collapse that. This is where we will be operating most of the time, because once someone has connected their wallet, we want them to be able to sign in using their wallet, or if they are already signed in, we want them to be able to sign out. Cool. For now, let's just place a button called sign in with Ethereum, and give it some style so it does not look terrible, and let's add a line break. Cool. Let's just add some margin. Cool. So when someone clicks this button, we want to be able to request some signature requests, like we want to request the signature from their wallet, right? Now there are several things involved, like we saw in these steps. When someone clicks that button, there's more than just one thing going on. We have to get that nonce from the server, and then we have to receive that nonce and get the user to sign a message using it. So there's multiple steps involved. I think we should just first write the code for the backend. Now, since we are using Next.js, it just lets us create some API routes inside this API folder. That's kind of like, that's what Next.js is basically a server that serves web pages, if you will. But if you're not familiar with Next.js API routes, you can just read up on them Here again, I have this link in the description. Just briefly go through this and you'll get the idea. But since we will need to ask the backend for a nonce, let's create a route for that. Let's say nonce.ts. Now, before we go ahead, we need to install some libraries. We need to install actually 2 libraries. One of them is called Cway, which is a short form for sign in with Ethereum, and the other one is Ion Session. We will use Ion Session to maintain the session, the authentication for the user, and Cway is just used to generate our messages. Basically, we will see how we actually use these two later on. So once the dependencies have been installed, let's just do some configuration work for Ion Session now. So if you are following along using TypeScript, you'll have to do some configuration for the types, so that TypeScript does not complain when you try to access some things from the session. So quickly just create a folder called types at the root of your project, then create a folder named Ion Session inside of it, and then create a file named index.t.ts. We'll be defining some global types inside of here. I have posted a link to the repo which contains the final source code for this project. So just go to that repo and copy over the contents of that file from there. I'm going to do the same. Cool. The next thing we have to do is actually define some settings for Ion Session, like the name of the cookie and the password, etc., etc. So quickly create a file named utils.ts at the root of your project. Again, go to the repo, copy over the contents of the file, and you're set. So as you can see, we need to access the Ion password from the env. We haven't set that up yet, so let's do that. Create a .env file at the root of your project, and I'm just going to copy over this password I created earlier today. It can be anything longer than 32 characters, but has to be secure enough if you are writing this for production. Cool. Now we have Ion Sessions all set up. Let's just quickly restart the server so that we can access the new env. Now let's get to writing the backend code. I'm not going to actually write all the code line by line, since I know anyone who's watching this is here for the front end stuff, but I will try to briefly explain what all of those functions are doing, just so we know what's actually going on. So again, go to the repo, copy and paste the contents of the nonce.ts file. Let's quickly have a rundown of what this function is doing, what this route is doing. As you can see, it's trying to generate a nonce when someone makes a GET request to this route. We are using this function from the Cway package that we just installed, and we are adding that to the session, and then we are proceeding to save the session, and we are sending back the nonce as text to the front end. So if you remember, this is the first step of this process. So let's see if it actually works. Let's go to /API/nonce, and it works. We have a random nonce being generated every time we make a request. Cool. Now let's actually get this nonce on the front end. So to do that, let's just create a function named signin. Let's make this an async function, and all we are going to do is just make a simple fetch request to /API/nonce. So nonce says await fetch /API/nonce. Cool. And let's convert this into text, and let's make this show up as an alert. And when someone clicks the sign in button, let's call that sign in function. Cool. So if we click on this button, we should see one of these random nonces showing up. It sure does. Cool. So the next step is to actually pass this nonce along with some other information to MetaMask. If you go back to the demo, when you click on this sign in button, you will see that not only the nonce but some other information is also being passed to your MetaMask wallet or whatever wallet it is that you are using. So let's figure out how we can do that. We already have access to the nonce now. And to create that message in that standard format according to the sign in with Ethereum EIP, we will be making use of the CWay package again, and there's a standard way to do it. We have to include some fields like we saw here, like we need to pass in the domain, the URI, stuff like that. So let's just do that. Let's create a message. I'm just going to copy and paste the standard way to do it. We are importing this CWay message class from CWay, and we are passing in all this information: domain, statement, URI, and the nonce. So we have already fetched the nonce, so we don't need to do this. And we need to pass in address and chain ID. So let's get the user's address, and so address is equal to account.address, and let's get the chain ID. So chain ID is equal to, we'll have to make use of the use network hook from wagmi for this. So just use network active chain, and let's just do ID. Cool. So now we have this message being formed. Let's log this to see what's happening. We have to actually call this method called prepare message, and we should see the message being formed when we click that button. Let me make this a bit larger so that you can read it. Cool. There's the message. Localhost 3000 wants you to sign in with Ethereum, and it has all those fields that we saw in this demo. Amazing. Now we just need to pass this to MetaMask and get the user to sign it. So to do that, we will be making use of this hook called use sign message from wagmi. Just import use sign message from wagmi, and we will be making use of this function called sign message async. Again, if all of this is new for you, you will get used to it from if you use it like from time to time. If you have any confusion about how to use these hooks, the documentation is amazing. Just go through the documentation for that hook to get a better idea of what it is doing. But yeah, let's proceed with what we were trying to do. Okay, so we have the message. Now let's get the user to sign it. So we are going to await sign message async, and let's pass in message.prepare message. Maybe we need to pass this in like this. Message, it's an object. Cool. So if we now click on this button, we should be seeing a pop-up that wants us to sign a message. Cool. Let's log the signature so that we can see what's actually getting returned from that pop-up. Let's sign this message. So this is the signature that we have to send back to the backend. Again, this is the third step. We get the user to sign a message, and then we send it back to the server to get it verified. But we don't have a route that actually does this yet. We don't have a route that verifies any signatures. So let's do that first. Let's create a file called verify.ts inside of the API folder, and again, let's just copy and paste the code from the repo. Let's briefly run through what's happening. We are passing in a message and a signature, and it's trying to validate the signature against the nonce that it has. If fields.nonce is not equal to request.session.nonce, it will just throw you an error. Otherwise, it will save it to the session and you're logged in. Cool. So let's now actually make that request on the front end. Now in order to do this, we have, like you saw, it's expecting some payload. It's expecting these two things inside of a post request. So we'll need to pass in some payload. So let's do that. Let's make a fetch request to /API/verify. Let's make the method post. I can't type to save my life. Let's define some headers. It's content type application JSON, and let's pass in the body basically. Let's JSON.stringify the message and the signature. Cool. And let's see the response that we get back. This .json. Cool. Let's try this now. Sign in with Ethereum. Sign. Oh, we need to await the promise. Sign with Ethereum. Cool. It was successful. We are now signed in, but as you can see, the UI is not changing because we are not actually checking if we are not reacting to it. Basically, we are just logging the response. We don't want to stop there. So now let's make the UI actually react to what's happening. So let's create some state to keep track of the user's sign-in status, if you will. Let's initialize this as an empty object, but let's define some types. It can contain an address, it can contain an error, or it can contain a loading indicator. Cool. So let's now wrap all of this inside of a try catch, so that if in case there's an error, we can just set it inside of our state. Let's just delete this console log. Let's just set state to cool. And TypeScript will complain because we haven't defined a type for error yet, and it will complain again because it doesn't like the fact that I'm trying to define a type for an error. So let's just expect an error there. Cool. Let's also check for any error in the response. So if it's not okay, let's just I don't know, throw it. There was an error verifying your signature, and if all is good, let's just set the state address. Cool. And it might also be worthwhile setting the loading indicators. Let's set loading here as well. Cool. I think we are keeping track of all the state now. Now it's just a matter of us displaying it correctly. Before we do that, let's also just add the logout route and the me route. The me route will basically return the current active session so that we can actually check if someone is already logged in. So let's just go to the repo, copy and paste the code. We are just destroying the session and we are telling it to not cache this, and we are sending back. Okay, that's all that's happening here. And let's add the me route, and again go to the repo, copy and paste it. This is even simpler than that. We are just getting the address from the session and sending it back. If there is no session, it will just be blank. Cool. Now let's actually fetch the session when the page loads, so that we can actually display the UI properly, just in case someone is already logged in. In order to do that, again, we'll just have to make a simple get request to the me route, and yeah, let's just define a function called handler inside of here. We will be making a get request to fetch API/me. Let's see if that API route actually works. Let's see what happens when we see that's my address. It works, and we are getting it in the form of a JSON object. So let's do that. GitHub Copilot, as always, convenient. And let's set our state. Cool. I think that should be good. Let's, just in case, let's also wrap this inside of a try catch, and I don't know, let's just log this error if there is one. Cool. Now let's call this handler when the page loads, and in order to actually make sure that when you switch tabs it actually reflects the state, we have to add one more thing. So if, as you can see, I'm signed in here, I should be signed in here as well. To actually make sure that this happens, we'll need to add just 2 more lines of code. We'll need to add this event listener to listen for focus events, and just call the handler whenever someone opens this tab again. And when the page unmounts, we want to remove this event listener. Again, GitHub Copilot knows what I'm trying to do. Cool. Now let's actually write the JSX, because we are fetching everything, we are setting the state, but we are not actually displaying anything on the UI yet. So let's check the state for the address, and if there is one, we want to display X, and if there isn't one, we want to display Y. Let's just display the address for now. If there is someone logged in, let's just display their address. If they are not logged in, let's just display you are not logged in. Let's see if this works. Cool. I can see my address showing up here. Let's see. Let me sign in. Let me sign out. Okay, that's a post endpoint. So let's just quickly add a sign out button as well. Sign out. Let's create a sign out function. All we want to do is make a fetch request to /API/logout. It has to be a post request, and we don't actually need the response. We can just set the state to an empty object, and let's assign it to this button. So now when someone clicks this, cool, it works. Now let's actually display these buttons accordingly. So if someone is logged in, we don't want them to see the sign in with Ethereum button, and if they are not logged in, we don't want them to see the sign out button. So let's do that. It's just going to be some simple ternary logic. So if someone is logged in, when state.address is not null, when it exists, that means someone is logged in. So in that case, we want them to see the sign out button. So let's just display that, and we also want them to see their address. So let's also add that. Let you are signed in as state.address. Cool. And if they are not logged in, let's display the sign in with Ethereum button. Awesome. Let's see if this works. Let me disconnect my wallet, connect it again, sign it with Ethereum, sign the message, and I'm logged in. Awesome. Let me click sign out, and I'm now signed out. Let me try logging in again. Let's try opening this in another tab. Awesome. Let's try signing out, and I'm signed out in the other tab as well. That's it. That's all you need to do to add sign in with Ethereum to your React app.